Okay, number one, the directions say find the inverse of each function. So here's our original function. They want us to find the inverse. Which one of these are the inverse? Okay, well, who remembers the steps to finding the inverse? Switch the x and the y. Well, isn't this f of x basically the y? They're the same thing. So when we switch x and y, what will it look like? Right? And then, what's step two? Solve for y. Okay, well, what do you need to do to get y by itself? Multiply by that 3 to get it out of the bottom, and then you'll multiply by 3 over here. Shh. 3x now equals 3 plus 4y, because over here, the 3 over 3 canceled to 1. Now to get y by itself, what do? Subtract this 3 to the other side, and so now you have 3x minus 3 equals 4y. Now to solve for y, what's the remaining step? Divide by 4, divide by 4. These 4's will cancel, leaving y by itself like we wanted. And the inverse is 3x minus 3 over 4, which is choice A. Okay, number 2. Same thing. They want you to find the inverse. So if the first step is switch the x and the y, you need to kind of figure out where x and y are. Here's x, and this is y. So when we switch them, what will it look like? Right? Now to solve for y, what do we do first? Add the 4 to the other side, and we have x plus 4 equals negative 2y. Now to solve for y, what do? Divide by negative 2 on both sides. So we end up with y equals x plus 4 over negative 2. Do you see one that looks just like that? No, because they chose to reduce it. Okay, they put the x over the negative 2, and they put the positive 4 over a negative 2. When you do that, the x over negative 2, you can't do anything with that. But what can you do to the 4 over the negative 2? Just make it a minus 2, right? It becomes a whole number. And so it's b. Okay, number 3. G of x equals 3 minus x. This is another find the inverse. It's just free response. So the first thing you'll need to do is make that a y. Y equals 3 minus x. The first step is to switch those. So it becomes x equals 3 minus y. Now to solve for y, what can we do? Subtract 3 on both sides. So x minus 3 equals negative y. Now what can we do on both sides? Right, that's like a negative 1 being multiplied by that y, correct? So we need to divide by negative 1 on both sides. Now more than likely, you will not see the answer left like this. They're not going to leave y equals x minus 3 over negative 1. They're going to reduce it. X divided by negative 1 is just negative x. Because isn't that a 1 right here? And a 1 divided by negative 1 is a negative 1. And then a negative 3 divided by negative 1 is a positive 3. So that would be the inverse. Okay, number 4, same thing. You're just going to make that g of x, y equals, and now you do the steps. Switch the x and y, so it'll become x equals 2 minus y. Then you solve for y, so how would we go about that? Subtract the 2 on both sides, and you'll get x minus 2 equals negative y, which is a negative 1 times y. And now what do? Divide by negative 1 on everything, so this is basically just like the last problem. So y equals x over negative 1 is negative x. Negative 2 over negative 1 is positive 2. So that's the final answer. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, for the next section, they give you 2 functions, and they want to know, are they inverses of each other? Does anybody remember how we found out if they're inverses of each other? You find the inverse of one of them. So pick one of them. Which one would you prefer to work with? H. Okay. So h of n I'm going to call y equals. And then this n I'm going to call x. Not that it really matters, but it just kind of sticks to the same thing every time. So if I switch the x and the y, it becomes x equals 4y plus 5 over 5. Now to solve for y, what do I do first? Multiply by 5 on both sides. So I get 5x equals 4y plus 5, because those cancel each other out. Now I subtract the 5 on both sides, right? So I get 5x minus 5 equals 4y. And now what do I do last to solve for y? Divide by 4. And those cancel out. So don't I have y equals 5x minus 5 over 4? Doesn't that look just like this one? So that lets me know, yes, they are inverses. Because when you do one's inverse, it gives you the other. So that marks out A and D. Okay, now for the next part, I just want to show you, you don't have to write it down unless you have room and feel like you need to. I want to show you why B is the right answer instead of C. Now there is one little typo on this page. This said H of n and then they used the G the whole time, so we'll just say G of n. Okay, so this one says yes because f of g of n equals g of f of n, which equals n. What this says in English is, if you take the g function and plug it into the f function, your result is going to be n. If you take the f function and plug it into the g function, your result is going to be n. So let's look and just watch. You don't worry about writing it down, just watch. Okay, so we know it's yes. We just aren't sure which one of these is correct. Everybody understands why it's yes though, correct? Okay, so first I'm going to do this part. I'm going to take the f function first, which is 5n minus 5 over 4. See how all I did was rewrite this f function? I'm going to plug the g function in it. See how the g is kind of sitting inside? So here's the g function. 4n plus 5 over 5. Okay, so just watch. Isn't this 5 a whole number? Aren't all whole numbers technically over 1? So watch what I can do. Can't I reduce that 5 with that 5? And so now it just leaves that canceled out, that canceled out. So now don't I just basically have 4n plus 5 minus 5 up top because everything else canceled? What's a plus 5 minus 5? Cancel. And what's 4n over 4? Won't those cancel, leaving just n? So see how when I plugged the g into the f function, my result was n? Okay, now I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to plug the f into the g. Okay, so starting with the g function, 4n plus 5 over 5. That's the g function. And now I'm going to plug the f into it. 5n minus 5 over 4. Okay, so 4 is a whole number, so over 1. Those cancel. The negative 5 plus 5 cancels. And the 5 over 5 cancels, leaving just n. That's why B is the answer. Does that make sense? Because when you plug the g function and the f function, your result is n. And when you plug the f into the g, your result is n. That's why they are inverses. Okay, number 6. They want to know if these are inverses. So which one do you prefer to work with? Okay, so I'm going to make this y equals x plus 5, and now I'm going to find its inverse. What's step 1? Okay, so it will become x equals y plus 5. And then what do I do? I need to solve for y by subtracting 5. So y equals x minus 5. Does the inverse of the one we were doing look like the other function? So it's no, so that eliminates D. But now we need to figure out y. Okay, this one says because when you plug g into f, it's not equivalent to when you plug f into g. That's saying like if I plugged this into this x and worked it out, and then I plugged this into that x and worked it out, they wouldn't be equivalent. Okay? But I don't want to do all that because I just feel like it'll go over your heads anyway. I want you to read the 3 statements though and tell me which one you think I could go ahead and cross out. Okay, why B? Right. It says since neither g of x or f of x have inverses. Well, didn't we just find the inverse of that one? And we can find the inverse of that one, you just have to do the 2 steps. So we mark that one out. Now, using your common sense, do you think it's no because they're not equivalent or no because they are equivalent? They're not, so it's A. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, now flip to the next page. I wish the next 2 weeks would. Alright. Which graphs below represent a function whose inverse is not a function? Pay attention. Choose all that apply. How do I know what the inverse of this graph looks like? Right, the opposite point. So, like, what are the coordinates of this point? 4, 4. What's the opposite of 4, 4? So that point's going to stay where it is even in the inverse, correct? What about this point? What are its coordinates? 2, 2. Shh. But even when you reverse those, isn't it still going to be 2, 2? So those 2 points are going to be in the same place even on the inverse. But look over here. What are the coordinates of this point? Negative 2, positive 2. So when we flip-flop those, won't it be 2, negative 2? Which is right here when you plot it. And then what about this point? What are its coordinates? Negative 4, 4. So what is its inverse? 4, negative 4, which is right 4, down 4. So the inverse flips on its side, correct? You are distracting people from paying attention. So, did the original graph pass the vertical line test? Did that original V pass? Yes. No matter where we drew that line on that original V, it only hit it once. But will it still pass the inverse? No, it hits it twice. So A is one of your answer choices because, and that 5, I think I whited it out. It shouldn't be there. I think I whited it out before I copied it. Okay? So, do you see why this is a graph whose inverse is not a function? Okay, so let's look at B because it says choose all that apply, meaning there could be more than one right answer. For B, if this point is at 4, 4, where's its inverse point going to be? 4, 4. If this point's at 2, 0, where's its inverse point going to be? 0, 2. And if this point's at 0, negative 4, where's its inverse point going to be? Which is right here. Is that still a function? Yes, so that's not one of the right answers. Okay, C. Where's this point located? 4, 8. So where's its inverse point going to be? So right A, up 4. Shh. 2, negative 2. Where's its inverse point going to be? Okay. 0, negative 4. Where's its inverse point going to be? Negative 4, 0. And then negative 2, negative 2. Isn't it going to stay? And then this one right here, was it negative 4, 8? So isn't that going to be 8, negative 4? So what happened to the parabola? It flipped on its side, so is it still a function now that we've done the inverse? No, so C is also a right answer. Okay, because when you do the inverse of it, it's no longer a function. It no longer passes the vertical line test. Okay, D. When I move this point, which is at 2, 8, to its inverse point, which would be 8, 2, it'll be right there. This one looks like it's at 1, 3, so that'd be 3, 1. This one's at 0, 2, so it'd be 2, 0. This one's at negative 1, negative 1, positive 1. So positive 1, negative 1. So about right there. And then this one's at negative 2, negative 4, which will be negative 4, negative 2. So now that I did the inverse of the original cubic function, is this inverse still a function? Yes, all cubics will pass the vertical line test, even their inverse. Okay? So the only ones that were not functions once you did their inverse were A and C. Those are the 2 correct answers. Alright, A. Consider the table below. Which of the following points could lie on the graph of the inverse of the function? Choose all that apply. What I suggest is that you just quickly make a new table with the inverse point. So what would my first inverse point be? 4, 2, then right, and 3a. Okay, so that is the inverse of this. So they want us to find the points that could lie on the inverse of this. Well, here they all are. Was negative 4, 2 one of them? No. Was negative 3, 2 one of them? Yes, so that's the right answer. Was negative 2, 2 one of them? No, was positive 4, positive 2? Yes, so B and D are the right answers. Okay, number 9. M plus 4 to the 4th power. This is Pascal's triangle. Let's go over quickly how to recreate the triangle. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 goes all the way down the diagonals. Okay? And so here's your first blank. Stop. That's a 2 because 1 plus 1 is 2. I don't want to hear it when you fail this test. There will be no retakes. 1 and 2 is 3. 2 and 1 is 3. 1 and 3 is 4. 3 and 3 is 6. 3 and 1 is 4. That's how you create it. Now that we've made it that far, that's all we need for these two problems, because this one's to the 4th power, which will be that row, and that one's to the 3rd power, which will be this row. Now, before you even start the problem, you should probably go ahead and see if there's anything you can eliminate. Since it's to the 4th power, how many terms will you have in your answer? 5. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't help us because every choice has 5 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every choice on this one has 5 terms, so that doesn't help us. So we're going to write out 1, 4, 6, 4, 1. What goes on each one of those? An M. Okay, and then 4 goes on each one of them, and since it's a number, you put it in parentheses. Okay, now you have to remember how to do your exponents. M starts out to the 4th power, because since it was first in the binomial, it gets to start out to the 4th, and then from there, it decreases down to the 0th power. Hold on, and then what does the 4 do? Right, it has to do the opposite. And does anybody remember why? Right, within each term, the exponents have to add up to 4. Like 4 plus 0 is 4, 3 plus 1 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4. That's why. Okay, so now look. We have a 1 times an m to the 4th times a 4 to the 0, which equals what? 1, right? What's 1 times m to the 4th times 1? M to the 4th. That can go ahead and eliminate which choice? C. The m to the 4th term should not have a 5. Okay, so we're done with term 1. Now let's go to term 2. I have a 4 times an m cubed times a 4, which becomes a 6. Right, that eliminates B. Now C, I have a 6 times an m squared times a 16, and that becomes 96m squared, which doesn't help us because both of our choices still in it are 96m squared. 4 times m times, what is 4 cubed? What's 4m times 64? 256m, right? That one's not right, so it's A. Go ahead and quickly try 10 by yourself just to practice this before I go over it. Let's be quiet. Okay, so she said, since it's cubed, you have to use this line, 1, 3, 3, 1. Now, that kind of lets you know you're going to have 4 terms in your final answer, correct? Correct. Which eliminates B. Plus, they should be in order. See how these are B cubed, B squared, B to the first, no B at all? That one was out of order. It had the constant before the B to the first. Okay, so now what do I put on each one?
You put a B on each one, and you put the parentheses. I'm sorry. Then you put parentheses for 3.
Stop talking. Honest, tell me how to do it.
I'm over here learning.
She asked.
And then you're going to down, you're going to have 3.
Right.
And then you're going to have a 2. Then you're going to have a 1. You're going to have a 0. Then you're going to go everywhere and have 0. Then you're going to have 3. And then you're going to get B3 for your first one. You're going to get...
Okay, but isn't that all we need to know? Because look at these. So it's got to be A. Okay, next page. This is the expanded form of which one? Okay, well first let's start talking about how to narrow it down. Pay attention. Negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. When do the signs alternate? When your binomial is minus, so that eliminates A. Now, I want to know how you would get a 243. Would it be by doing a 2 to the 5th or a 3 to the 5th? Okay, so that eliminates C. And then, how do you get a negative 1 at the end? A negative 2 to the 5th or a negative 1 to the 5th? So it must be D. So use those same methods to figure out 12. 12, what'd y'all get? A is correct. Shh, you should have got one with a minus in the middle because the signs alternate. Shh. Guys, if you have a plus in the middle, won't every single term be positive? So if you have alternating signs, it had to have been a minus. Then the way to get 81 would be 3 to the 4th. And the only other 3 to the 4th was this one we had already eliminated because of the plus. Okay, number 13. Find each product. So what are they wanting you to do here? By what method? Okay, so n times 3n is 3n squared. N times negative 1 is negative 1n. 7 times 3n is positive 21n. And 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. Okay, so 3n squared just drops because it's the only n squared term, as does negative 7. It's the only constant. So that eliminates B right there because that, oh, and D, because you know it has to be minus 7. And then what does the middle term become? Positive 20. So it's C. Okay, so what do we do for number 14? FOIL again. 8m times 7m is... And then look, that's the only one with a 56m squared, so you're done. Okay, number 15. Since it's subtraction, what does that mean? Right, every sign over here is going to change to the opposite. So this 8 that was positive is now going to be minus 8. This 6 that was positive is now minus 6. That becomes minus 7, and that becomes plus 4. So now we just combine like terms. The 6 would combine with what over here? And it is a minus 7. So what's 6 minus 7? Negative 1. So that eliminates C. C doesn't have a negative 1. It has a negative 9. Now let's move on to the next term. 5m will combine with 4m. And they're both positive. So combined they make 9m. But that doesn't really help us because our remaining ones all have 9m. 8m cubed will combine with, and isn't it 8 minus 6? 2m cubed. That doesn't really help us. And then you have 2m squared minus 8m squared, which is negative 6m squared. So what's going on here? Because our m cubes are all right, our m squareds are all fine, and our m's are all 9. They're all fine. There's no m to the 4th anywhere up there. So where in the world did they get those? That eliminates those 3, leaving B. Yeah. Okay, number 16. Same kind of problem. Since it's subtraction, that 2 will become minus, that 4 will become minus, the 6 will become plus, and the 4 will become plus. Alright, now we combine like terms. 5x will combine with the 2x, and you're subtracting 2x from 5x, which is 3x, but that doesn't help us. They all have a 3x. Negative 5 will combine with the positive 4. What's negative 5 plus 4? Negative 1. But look, all 4 choices have a negative 1, so that doesn't help us. Negative 3x cubed will combine with negative 4x cubed, which would be negative 7x cubed. So that brings us down to just B or C. And then negative 6x to the 4th and positive 6x to the 4th cancel each other out, which leaves C. Okay, number 17. They want you to reduce. What's 24 divided by 6? 4. What's x cubed divided by x to the 1st? X squared. Because remember, when dividing variables, you subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 is 2. Now over here, what's 30 divided by 6? And what's x squared divided by x to the 1st? X. So we're looking for 4x squared plus 5x, which is B. Number 18. The top can be factored by GCF. What is the GCF of 10n and 50? 10. When you pull out a 10, what's left?
Nothing for the first one. It's 5 for the next.
Well, n plus 5, right? Because 10 times n is 10n, 10 times 5 is 50. Now that you've factored it out, you're able to cancel it with the bottom 10, leaving n plus 5 as the final answer. Okay, then number 19, just break it apart. Like put the 7x over 2 and the plus 6 over 2 and reduce. Will that reduce? No, so it's going to stay 7x over 2. Will that reduce? To a 3, so it's D. Okay, now I'm going to give out